2024 was an incredibly difficult year for me, and if I'm going to be completely honest, it was one of the worst years of my entire life. And there's some really good reasons of why the year was so truly awful. But even outside of the really bad things that happened, there was a constant that was there from the beginning until the end that really ensured that it was a terrible year. And that's what I really want to talk about in this video. That constant, what I've hopefully learned from it, and how I'm hoping to move forward, and maybe not getting rid of that constant, as I'm sure that will always pop up in different ways, but how I want to do a better job managing that. And the constant I'm talking about is fear. I really let fear rule my life in 2024, and it really manifested in a few different ways. To start the year, there was a really big fear of rejection and a really big fear of loss. For the beginning of 2024, my fiance was still in residency. It was thankfully the last 6 months of residency. But residency was very difficult in so many different ways. Obviously, the pandemic was a really difficult time, a lot of isolation for all of us. But after the pandemic, my fiance got into residency, and that was 3 more years of a lot of isolation. She was working 6 to 7 days a week, 70+ hour weeks, and I rarely got to see her. Not only that, her schedule was constantly changing, and it was very difficult to get a grasp on what each week would be like. Is it days? Is it nights? Is it a 12-hour shift? Is it an 8-hour shift? Is she going to start late in the morning, early in the morning? This, that, and the other. And with all that flux, it made it even more difficult to spend time with her, but also more difficult to make plans with people. And after 2.5 years of all of this, it had just gotten so tough for people to make plans with us. I think they were sick of us not always being able to do things. And I think people struggled to really understand that we're not saying no because we don't want to see them, but just a lot of times we can't do things, and we're not making plans with people as much. I'm not putting myself out there as much. So it was a really difficult time with a lot of isolation, and there's a lot of fear of rejection. If I finally did put myself out there, if I did make the most of this one good weekend I had, in a month where me and Nikki both had time, we could do something, like, what if we're not able to make the most of it? What if we're not able to do this or see these people? And there was just a lot surrounding that was tough. And as you guys saw on this channel, with me uploading a video titled, "How much longer will I do YouTube?" There's a lot of fear that I could lose good things. There was a lot of negative, at least it felt in my life at that point, a lot of difficulties to move through, a lot of just not being able to see people and do a lot of really fun things. So I think I started to get more and more worried of losing the really good things I had. And rather than making the most of my platform, my channel, and making the videos I really wanted to make, I had just gotten so scared that, well, what if it all goes away? My fiance was about to start her career at 29. Now I was going to be a 29-year-old Pokemon YouTuber, and content creation is a young person's game. It's difficult to look around and find out the ages of all of the new huge content creators as they blow up, as they're always a lot younger than 29. And there's a lot of questions. How much longer can I do this? I don't know. I was asking the wrong questions, and it was just fearful of so many things. So in the beginning of 2024, I did my best to work on all of these things, work on them by myself, work on them in counseling. And I feel like I made a lot of good progress. We could see the light at the end of the tunnel. Residency was going to be done. Instead of, these 70+ hour weeks and difficult to really match up our schedules, there would be so much open time, and I could really, build my schedule and know what hers was going to be. When she found her job, we could try to sync things up. It was going to be great. We were moving towards some really great times, and I was really starting to put myself out there more and try to make more plans and see friends more, see family more. And it really ended with a fantastic birthday where I was able to, figure out what I really wanted to do and have a wonderful birthday, spending time with Nikki, with my dad, with my mom. Just I had a wonderful time. But around this time, I started, worrying about a new fear. It was a continuation of the loss, or the fear of loss, as I talked about, like possibly, how long am I going to do YouTube? And this fear of loss was like loss of someone close to me. How would I handle losing someone close to me? And that was a thought that just burrowed its way into my mind and stayed there. And the biggest reason for that is we were starting to plan our wedding. And we had been engaged for a while. We got engaged, I think it was before the pandemic, actually. Yeah, no, it was during the pandemic. I don't know. Everything gets so hazy with the pandemic. But we got engaged in the pandemic. We didn't want to get married during the pandemic. That's the main point. We didn't want to get married then. It'd be so difficult for so many people to, show up. There was so much about that just didn't feel right. But when we got to residency, I didn't want to get married when Nikki wouldn't have a lot of time. I wanted to make sure we could plan things right. I want to make sure that, it wasn't just, okay, the best day of our lives together and then up back to normal, back to not really seeing her most of the days of the week and it being really stressful and her being so exhausted. And I didn't want to deal with that. I wanted us to be able to plan things, have, hopefully a beautiful wedding, go on a honeymoon and just have time to really enjoy being together, finally being able to spend quality time together. But because we waited so long, there just started to be a fear in my head of what if we waited too long? What if someone really important to me isn't able to go to this wedding? What if someone really close to me doesn't see me hit 1 million? Hey, who knows how long I'm going to be doing YouTube, but I know I'm going to hit 1 million somewhat soon. What if they miss these big moments? What if I'm not able to spend time with them once this difficult period of her life ends and things really open up? And, around that time, I remember really working on this and things were just going so well. And I kid you not, a week after talking through all of this and counseling, working through it all, and my birthday, I had to confront all of that head on as the Monday my fiance started her first vacation of the year, a week where we were going to plan our wedding invites and get those put together and get ready to send them. We were going to figure all of that out. That week, Monday, 8 a.m., I got a call from my mom and found out that something tragic happened with my uncle. And 2 weeks later, he passed away. Just had all of this fear about possibly losing someone close to me and all of that stuff I just talked about. And, the week after my birthday, it happened. And it was obviously devastating. I've talked about it a bit on this channel. Losing someone close to you, everyone unfortunately experiences it. Grief is difficult. It's a lot. And I did the best I could in that period to, understand, cope, figure all of this out. But it just really was my worst fears realized. And that was difficult. It was not something I ever prepared myself for. What happens if my worst fears are realized? And before I could really grapple with all of that, just one after another, these bad things kept happening in my life, just around me with people I loved. And thankfully, they weren't as horrific as tragically losing my uncle out of nowhere. But it was just one thing after another, and my head was spinning. I wasn't really able to get onto solid ground, it felt, and, really properly move past all these things and get back to the good place I felt like I'd gotten myself to. And all of that really ended with finding out my grandmother's heart was failing. And, there was really 3 options. 1, her heart fails. 2, open heart surgery, which did not feel like a good option. That just, for a lot of reasons, did not seem like a way that we could go. Or 3, some sort of non-invasive experimental surgery, see if that was even an option. And that felt like a long shot. Out of nowhere, I went from having these worries, these fears of, what would happen if I lost someone close to me before I had all of this time to spend with them and, really be able to reconnect and see them and you have them at my wedding and all these wonderful things, to I lost my uncle and I might lose my grandmother before all this happens. And it was so devastating for so many reasons. After my parents divorced, whenever I'd spend holidays with my mom, the holidays were usually me, my mom, my sister, that grandmother, and that uncle. And that was the group. That was the constant. And my grandmother and my uncle, they did so much for me growing up, in that period, after that period. They just mean so much to me. I mean, so many people in my life mean so much to me, of course, but I love them so, so much. And there was just never a world where I could imagine, my wedding without them, or all these big moments without them. Obviously, everyone's got to pass at some point. I just hadn't prepared myself for that. I wanted just a little bit more time, just a little bit more time. And that it was so much. Now, thankfully, if we fast forward, my grandmother, it was a really difficult process, or horrifically difficult. She was able to get the non-invasive experimental surgery, worked perfectly. She's doing incredible now. I got to spend a lot of really quality time with her through that process, and I feel very blessed and lucky, and who knows what tomorrow brings. That, thankfully, at least had a happy ending, and I'm very, very happy and blessed with that. But the point of all of this is that these fears I had, it felt like they kept getting realized. I kept picking myself back up and getting knocked down. And I think the final knockdown was my channel finally hits 1 million subscribers. My family put together this unbelievably beautiful video. Some of the most important people in my life all congratulating me and talking about what happened. Cried like a baby on stream. That was a lot. that was it was a crazy moment. And somehow it timed up with me going on my first work trip since the pandemic. I had never gone on any sort of work trip since I even made my PM7 channel. I'd never left to go see other creators, like do anything like that for work, just nothing. I'm just in my house making videos, trying to entertain people. That was all it was for a while, at least work-wise. And I'm finally going to go on this big work trip. Residency's done. Me leaving's not going to inconvenience Nikki, the dog, like everything should be good. I'm all geared up to go. I'm going to go to Vid Summit, see Mikey, see all these wonderful people, celebrate 1 million. It's going to be perfect. Day before I leave, huge family emergency happens for Nikki. Not going to go into any of the details. The details are not relevant. Main thing is, with less than 24 hours to go before I leave on my first trip in years, this huge emergency happens and we have to figure out what makes sense. Do I still go? Do I stay? What's even going on? Can I help? Can she help? Chaos. Horrible situation. We finally just decide, or thankfully, Nikki decided, hey, if you stay, I probably wouldn't be much help. I would just stay home with the dog. Someone else can take care of the dog. My mom was able to take care of the dog. I should still go on the trip. I still went on the trip. And while there were so many wonderful moments on that trip, there was a lot of guilt. Like, should I go home early? Should I really be here? What's going on? Is everything going to be okay? And thankfully, everything did end up being okay. But it felt like the straw that broke the camel's back in a lot of ways. I was so ready to celebrate 1 million and really celebrate myself and what I accomplished and focus on these positives after such a difficult year. And I don't think I ever picked myself back up after that trip. I got home and all that really mattered at that point was, doing what I could to take care of Nikki, try to take care of myself and just, get through the year and do what I had to do. Just do the work that I knew I needed to do. Make sure I did what I needed to do to provide for my family and, everyone that works for me and works with me. Just that was it. It was just kind of go through the motions and get through. And what I've realized looking back on this year, and the main thing I really want to take away from all of this, a lot of it really bad. I hope none of that ever happens again. Very bad. 10 thumbs down. Boo. What I realized, the straw that broke the camel's back, is in a lot of ways I just stopped living. I gave up. I was so fearful of that pain again, that whatever it may be, just more pain and more hurt. My heart just couldn't take more hurt and more pain and more worry, more fear. And I just stopped putting myself out there. I stopped doing anything that I'd really enjoy. And I think subconsciously, the worry was if I put myself out there and try to do these things I really love, I'm exposing myself for more hurt. And instead I just created all of these protective barriers to try to protect myself. You know, I isolated so much more, didn't really see friends, and didn't, you know, like try to make the content I wanted to make, didn't really care about my hobbies, didn't, you know, take care of myself physically as much, just really stopped doing. Because at the end of the day, it is so easy to just not do. It's so easy to just not do. And it may make sense to try to do all these things to protect yourself. But at the end of the day, even if you've put all these protective barriers up to try to protect yourself from these negative things that happen, negative things are still probably going to happen. And even if you feel like you're more protected from them, like really hitting you hard, you're still going to be affected somehow. And if you want any positive in your life, you have to give effort. For something bad to happen that affects you, you don't need to do anything at all for that to happen. But for anything good to happen, you have to put in some effort. And let me tell you, it can be incredibly difficult. Going on YouTube and clicking on a video that you think is going to entertain you, that takes effort. It genuinely does. It might be a small thing that takes effort. Trying to find a show that you can get into takes effort. Watching a movie, going out to the movies takes effort. You know, trying to exercise in any way, you know, get up and do something, that takes effort. To try to eat right, it takes effort. Hobbies, it takes effort to maintain them. Friendships, family, like putting yourself out there. All of these things, they take effort. And it is so much easier to just not do. There are a lot of things in this world that are, you know, worth being scared of. And for me, I really struggle with rejection. That's something I've always struggled with it, but something that I thankfully have learned, or at least I've been told and I'm trying to learn. While hearing no, you know, like while no can be really scary and can really hurt to be rejected in that way, if you get so scared of hearing no, eventually you're never going to hear yes. And I think a similar thing applies to what I'm talking about. If you just, you know, stop doing and try so hard just to protect yourself from all the bad, you're just going to sacrifice an ability to experience the good. And moving into 2025 and every year after that, I really want to do my best to prevent fear from ruling my life. There's a certain amount of anxieties and worry and fear that are healthy and are important. And there's some that you can't get rid of, and some you have to work through. But when it gets to a point where it just prevents you from doing the things that really make you happy, that's a really huge problem. And it's one that I'm hopeful I can move past. And if this resonates with any of you guys listening, I hope you can move past, even if it's just a small thing every day. That's okay. It doesn't have to be something big. And for me, I always try to solve everything at once. That's not how that works. Little bits. Maybe this video can be a little bit of that, of trying to vocalize the stuff and trying to move past it. And I'm hopeful that this is going to be a great year. I have so many wonderful things planned, at least on the content creation side, the side that you guys will see. I'm really hoping to, for the first time in my life, spend a year making videos that I really, really want to make. Just all the things I've always wanted to make, put myself out there, try to make them a reality. And I'm excited for that. I hope this is a great year for you guys. Thank you so much for your time. And I will see you guys hopefully sooner than I saw you last.